Hey there, America. Let's talk about China. No, not the pandas or the Great Wall, but the economic earthquake they unleashed on our manufacturing sector. We call it the China shock, and trust me, it's been a real kick in the pants. See, for decades, America was the king of making stuff. We built cars, TVs, you name it. Our factories were bustling and our workers were proud. Then, China entered the World Trade Organization in 2001, and suddenly, the game changed. China flooded the market with cheap goods, undercutting American businesses left and right. It was like a tidal wave of low-cost products that we just couldn't compete with. Factories closed, jobs vanished, and entire communities felt the pain. The heart of American manufacturing was being ripped out. We're talking millions of jobs lost, folks. Millions. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These were real people with real families facing real hardships. It's like the economic equivalent of ordering a small coffee and getting a bucket of ice water dumped on your head. The shock was palpable and the effects were devastating. This wasn't just some abstract economic theory, it was real people losing their livelihoods. People who had dedicated their lives to their jobs, suddenly finding themselves without work. Families, struggling to make ends meet. Parents wondering how they would put food on the table, pay the mortgage, or send their kids to college. Communities hollowed out and left behind. Once thriving towns turned into ghost towns with empty streets and shuttered businesses. The China shock wasn't just a catchy headline, it was a punch to the gut of the American dream. It challenged our resilience and forced us to rethink our future, and frankly, we're still reeling from the blow. But in true American spirit, we're adapting, finding new ways to thrive and working to rebuild what was lost. The journey is far from over, but our determination remains unshaken. Now I know what you're thinking. Isn't free trade supposed to be a good thing? After all, it's supposed to open up markets, lower prices for consumers, and create a more efficient global economy. And in theory, sure, it sounds great. The idea is that countries can focus on what they do best, producing goods and services more efficiently than ever before. Countries specialize in what they're good at, everyone benefits, right? Theoretically, this should lead to a win-win situation where all participating nations see economic growth and prosperity. Well, tell that to the factory worker in Ohio who lost his job because some corporation decided it was cheaper to make widgets in Wuhan. For many, the reality of free trade has been far from the rosy picture painted by economists. The problem is, China didn't play by the same rules. They manipulated their currency, subsidized their industries, and created an uneven playing field, and basically gave themselves a massive head start in the global race to the bottom. This head start allowed them to dominate certain sectors, pushing out competitors who couldn't keep up. It's like entering a marathon where your competitor gets to start 10 miles ahead and ride a scooter. The unfair advantages made it nearly impossible for American companies to compete on equal footing. The result? American companies couldn't compete. They were left with two choices, either adapt by moving their operations overseas or face the grim reality of shutting down. They either shipped their factories overseas or shut down altogether. This led to a hollowing out of the American manufacturing sector, once the backbone of the economy. And those good-paying manufacturing jobs everyone always talks about? The ones that provided a stable income and benefits for millions of families? They went the way of the dodo. The disappearance of these jobs has had a ripple effect, impacting not just the workers but entire communities that relied on these industries for their livelihood. Towns that once thrived on manufacturing have seen their local economies crumble, leading to increased poverty, crime, and a sense of hopelessness among residents. While there are efforts to bring back manufacturing jobs and create fairer trade policies, the road to recovery is long and uncertain. The question remains, can we find a balance that benefits everyone in this interconnected global economy? The impact of the China shock wasn't just limited to some rusty old factories in the Midwest. It rippled across the entire country, from the tech hubs of Silicon Valley to the furniture makers of North Carolina. Take the once booming electronics industry. Remember when we used to actually make stuff here? Well, China swooped in with its low-wage workforce and lax environmental regulations, and suddenly, Made in America became a relic of the past. And it wasn't just blue-collar jobs that disappeared. Engineers, designers, even software developers felt the pinch as companies outsourced their operations to chase cheaper labor. So what did we do about it? Well, some folks pinned their hopes on tariffs, those taxes on imported goods. The idea was to make Chinese products more expensive and give American companies a fighting chance. But here's the thing about tariffs. They're like trying to put out a fire with a squirt gun. Sure, they might provide some temporary relief, but they also come with unintended consequences, like higher prices for consumers, retaliation from China, and disruptions to global supply chains. It's a complicated mess, and frankly, there are no easy answers. Section 5, Robots and Algorithms, the other job-snatching culprits. Now, it's important to note that China wasn't the only force at play here. While they were busy churning out cheap goods, another revolution was happening on the home front: automation. Robots and algorithms started taking over tasks once performed by human workers. And guess what? They didn't need lunch breaks, health insurance, or sleep. So even if we could magically bring back all those manufacturing jobs from China, there's no guarantee those jobs would still exist in the same way. The nature of work itself is changing, and we need to adapt or risk getting left behind. Section 6, Fighting Back. Can American innovation outpace Chinese manufacturing? Okay, so we've established that the China shock was a real gut punch, and tariffs might not be the silver bullet solution some folks make them out to be. So, what's the plan then? Well, some argue that America needs to double down on its strengths: innovation and high-tech manufacturing. Instead of trying to compete with China on cost, we should focus on developing cutting-edge technologies and products that command a premium price. Think artificial intelligence, robotics, renewable energy, the kind of stuff that can create high-paying jobs and drive economic growth. Section 7, the high-tech gamble. Betting big on advanced industries. This strategy isn't without its risks. For one thing, it requires significant investment in research and development, education, and infrastructure. And there's no guarantee that it will be enough to offset the millions of jobs lost to China. But hey, at least it's a plan, right? Some companies are already taking this approach, investing in advanced manufacturing facilities right here in the U.S. They're betting that the combination of skilled American workers and cutting-edge technology will give them an edge in the global marketplace. Section 8. The China Conundrum: Cheap Goods, Expensive Consequences. Now, I know what you're thinking, but John, I love my cheap Chinese-made gadgets. Are you saying we should give up our affordable flat-screen TVs and smartphones? Look, I get it. As consumers, we've all benefited from China's rise as a manufacturing powerhouse. But we also need to acknowledge the hidden costs of those low prices: the environmental damage, the labor abuses, and the economic devastation in communities across America. It's a classic case of out of sight, out of mind. Section 9. The Consumer Catch-22. Low prices at what cost? Here's the thing. We can't just ignore the human cost of our consumption habits. Every time we buy a product made in a sweatshop or a factory that pollutes the environment, we're implicitly supporting those practices. It's time to start asking ourselves some tough questions. Are those cheap jeans really worth it if they contribute to child labor? Is that bargain basement electronics deal a good deal if it means American workers lose their jobs? We need to start thinking beyond the price tag and consider the true cost of our choices. Section 10. Charting a new course. Navigating the future of U.S.-China trade. This is a topic that has been on the minds of policymakers, economists, and business leaders for years. So, where do we go from here? The path forward is not straightforward, and it requires careful consideration of various factors. Well, the first step is to acknowledge that there are no easy answers. The complexities of this trade relationship cannot be overstated. The U.S.-China trade relationship is complex and multifaceted, involving not just economic interests but also political and social dimensions. Any solution will require a nuanced approach, one that takes into account the diverse interests of both nations. We need to find a way to compete with China without resorting to protectionist policies that harm American consumers. This means striking a balance between fair competition and consumer protection. We need to invest in our workforce, promote innovation, and ensure that our industries are equipped to compete on a global scale. Additionally, we must work with our allies to create a more level playing field. International cooperation is key to addressing the challenges posed by global trade. And most importantly, we need to have an honest conversation about the trade-offs involved. This means being transparent about the benefits and drawbacks of different trade policies, and the kind of future we want to build. The decisions we make today will shape the economic landscape for generations to come, and it's crucial that we approach this issue with both foresight and responsibility. Section 11. Can America bridge the gap, the long road to economic recovery? The China shock has been a wake-up call for America. It's exposed the vulnerabilities of our economy and the human cost of globalization. But it's also an opportunity to chart a new course, one that prioritizes American workers, invests in our future, and builds a more sustainable and equitable global economy. It won't be easy, but hey, America's no stranger to overcoming challenges. We've done it before, and we can do it again. The question is, are we up for the challenge?